Test, test. What are you doing in the morning? What are you doing?
Cheer up, huh?
You know what? Can I give him another one? Oh, sure. No. How was your trip?
Before we start, the camera seems to be kind of slowing up a little bit. I'm not sure why.
I hope he wasn't alone.
It might be the internet connection or something, but I just want to let you all know.
I think you should let him boogie. You can let him boogie. You can let them dance though. You might if we're really like stop. Test, test.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom. Oh, I feel like we should all do that at least once.
Yeah.
Oh,
I remember the first time I was in yoga and I got a chance to like really do the.
So good for you.
Yeah.
It's restorative. It is restorative. Maybe just remind your body it doesn't have to work as hard as it's working right now. Do less. Less shoulders, less eyes, just less work.
So hopefully everyone's got a prayer book. I'll do a formal introduction in a moment, but we're on page 24. Shalom Aleichem.
La, 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 la. Page 24, we join with our gorgeous band. Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hasharet, Malachi Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem Leshalom, Boachem Leshalom, Malachi Hasharet, Malachi Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruchuni, Baruchuni, L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tzedchem L'Shalom, Tzedchem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom.
Let's hear you.
Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch, Baruch Hu.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
So before we begin, before I do a formal introduction, just a few logistical announcements. Hopefully everyone's picked up a prayer book on their way in. If you didn't get it, you can get it right as you walk in. Erin Ackerman, one of our vice presidents, is our usher tonight, and she can direct you to anything that you might need. In addition, if you need the bathrooms, they're outside to the right. All gender and handicap accessible bathrooms are through the office toward the back. If you need hearing assisted devices, they're right inside to the right as well. And large print prayer books are as you walk in. If for some reason tonight you need an emergency exit, of course there's the exit we walked in, but notice there's an exit here, and if you walk through the doors in the back, there's an exit as well. Finally, it's all our job to make sure that each of us can follow along, that we understand where we are on the prayer book, and that we're on the same page both figuratively and literally. And so with that in mind, if you see someone who's lost, who don't know where they are on the page, don't be shy about leaning over and pointing to them and showing them where they are. That way we can all follow along. And sometimes, even if you don't know the words or the melodies, a simple yababa or a bim bim bam is enough. So with that, I sometimes need Shabbat more than others. And so right now in our household, we are on the third bout of strep throat from both of my children. Now, they've been on antibiotics for a while. I'm negative, don't worry. But we have had a kind of a crazy run of it the past few weeks. We show up at urgent care and the nurse practitioner greets us by name. And so last week, I, because of the time change, was dealing with this while I was in Amsterdam at a Reformed synagogue in Amsterdam. I led 17 teens across the pond, and we were able to be with this group. And I found this interesting tension because things had slowed down there, but hadn't yet slowed down here. Ayelet was still getting diagnoses and getting medicine and figuring all of that out. And I realized just how much, even if you don't realize it, Shabbat kind of makes its way into our bones. Shabbat slows us down. And you could see the dichotomy between the running around here 6 hours earlier and the way that people just carried themselves in Amsterdam at that service. Which means that the only way, because I feel like it's in the air, that Shabbat won't kind of reach inside of you is if you resist it. So what I would say is just let it in. Shabbat's going to come. You are going to slow down. You are going to breathe deeper. You are going to think more. You are going to be able to release some of that tension. And only if you make yourself go backwards do you find that that doesn't fully work. So let Shabbat do what it's meant to do. And you'll find that this does what it does. And so tonight, we have been advertising that this is the Shabbat for Ukrainian Jews. This is an initiative that for most of the Jewish world tonight, 1 year after the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine, is going to reflect on what that means. And later in the service, you're going to find both musically and during my sermon, I'm going to get a chance to kind of talk a little bit about where we're at and what we need to do. And in addition to that, we have in our congregation today, our whole adult B'nai Mitzvah class, or most of our adult B'nai Mitzvah class, who is shepherded so wonderfully by our student rabbi, James Fader, and who was here for a Shabbat dinner together and are joining together in services. And so in honor of you coming, it happens to be one of those unicorn Shabbats where we don't have a B'nai Mitzvah, I want to invite anybody up. You literally have to stand there and not do anything. But I want to invite anyone up from the adult B'nai Mitzvah class.
And we'll be with you.
Yes, to come stand with James as James lights the candles and leads us in Kiddush so you can be part of that ceremony. And we can honor you for the amazing learning week after week that you are doing as adults.
Come and clump. All right, last chance. Any new students want to jump in? Okay. on page 2. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר של שבת.
Page 5.
Oh, am I?
We'll join you.
Just start with.
Yeah.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon, hinchilanu, zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit, ki hu yom techila l'mikra'e kodesh, zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim.
Kivanu v'charta ve'otanu kiddashta mikol ha'amim b'shabat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu.
Baruch atah Adonai mechadesh haShabbat.
Amen. L'chaim. Shabbat shalom. B'nai mitzvah class. Thank you, everybody. Careful on your way down. Malachi, we're so close to starting.
We're on page 20, L'chadodi.
לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. 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 שמור וזכור בדיבורך, ישמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ותפארת ולתחילה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכוון אליך, כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נשוכה. זאת מעשת במחשבות תחילה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Verse 5. התעוררי, כי באורך ומאורי, אורי שתדברי, קראת אדוני עלייך דינה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. If you are able, we invite you to please rise. We face their entrance. בואי ושלום עטר בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצורה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה בלה.
We remain standing, page 28, Baruch.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך. Be my echo. Baruch Adonai,
Baruch Adonai,
המבורך,
Hamevorach,
לעולם
Leolam,
ועד. ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם. Adonai HaMevorach. You may be seated.
I'll invite us to turn our attention to the screen. B'chokhmah poteach. In wisdom, God opens up the gates, moving time through time, day into night, and night into day.
B'chokhmah poteach, b'chokhmah poteach, b'chokhmah poteach she'arim. That's the whole thing. Join us. B'chokhmah poteach, b'chokhmah poteach, b'chokhmah poteach she'arim. Before the wind I am weak, before the sun I faint. I lose my strength, I lose my strength. B'chokhmah poteach, b'chokhmah poteach, b'chokhmah poteach she'arim. Vanquished by a star, vanquished by a star. I go to my knees. I lose my strength. I lose my strength. B'chokhmah poteach, b'chokhmah poteach, b'chokhmah poteach she'arim. Before the song of a bird, before the breath of spring or fall, I am lost in nothing at all. Once more, b'chokhmah poteach, b'chokhmah poteach, b'chokhmah poteach she'arim. Before the miracles, Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Haravim.
Page 34. Actually.
אהבת עולם, בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, עמך אהבת. תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשוכבנו וקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם, לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם ולילה, נגע יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. We lift our voices.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך.
ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם.
אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני
אדוני אלוהיכם.
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Page 39. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt. But there's a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Page 40.
Ya la la ya ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya ya la la ya la 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 la.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך
נהדר בקודש.
נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. מלכותך ראו בניך, וקיים לפני משה ומרים. זה לי אנו ואמרו זה אנו אמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. One more time on ya 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 la la ya 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 la 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 ya la 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 ya ya la ya ya ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Page 42 or the screen.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שמירנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שמירנו לחיים. ושמור צאתנו ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם. Sometimes I lay under the moon and I thank God I'm breathing, and I pray don't take me soon, 'cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more wars, and our children will play one day, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו לחיים. ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
We rise together, page 46. And after this opening meditation, we move in silence through page 62.
אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך.
So if you're still praying your private prayers, keep going. Let it flow here or in the virtual universe outside of this room. But let us all come together and breathe in this prayer for peace as a kihila, as a faith community, as a community without answers, but with hope that our prayers may in some way help us grow in peace, grow in compassion, and make us whole. We're on page 60. Please join us.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amecha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amecha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol ashar. Shalom, Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amecha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amecha Tasim Leolam. V'tov b'einecha levarech et Amicha Yisrael b'chol rit ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם לעולם. שלום שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם תשים לעולם.
This point in our service, we offer this opportunity to pray a Mishaberach, a prayer for those in need of healing, and I'll ask you to join me on page 253. But I'd really like you to think of all those in need of healing, of body, mind, soul, that is either in your hearts or your minds. And as I look around the room, I'll ask you to please name those people. You'll see the names on the screen, I think in a minute, but we'll begin on page 253. Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor Abracha before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishaberach Mekor Abracha renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. So I want to begin before I talk a little bit about Ukraine by talking about 2 days ago when I first heard the news that this weekend, that really tomorrow, is going to be this National Day of Hate. Now, I'm not convinced, by the way, that it's going to be anything, and I really hope that I'm right. It feels a little bit like we're being trolled. I had a friend use that word to me today, almost like if the groups really meant something, they wouldn't call themselves that. They're calling themselves that to scare us. If they meant it, they would call themselves a National Day of Heritage or a National Day of Whiteness or something like that. But I bring this up because I'm exhausted. And when I heard that this was happening, the last thing that I wanted to do was to write another letter to the congregation, to call the Bloomfield police again, to think about a response. The last thing in my mind that I ever wanted was just to act, because I'm a little tired of acting. I'm a little tired of caring. I'm a little tired of worrying. I'm tired of being anxious. And the truth is, when we feel tired, one of the things that we tend to do is we tend to look away. I kind of just wanted to pretend like what I was reading wasn't true, and that I didn't need to make that phone call, and that I didn't need to write that email. But that's not the way this world works. And in fact, one of the greatest problems that we have as a society, and the reason why, if it happens, good will not win out over evil, is because we just don't have the stamina. We are just too tired. And we have to find a way to not let that be the case. Right? The arc of morality always bends toward justice, but only if we give it enough time and only if we keep pushing. Because there will always be forces that are pushing against us. And I've found that as I've been reflecting on 1 year of war in Ukraine, I'm realizing that I was really engaged with what was going on a year ago. I spoke about it multiple times from the Bima. We prayed about it. We had a Ukrainian flag out front. And then our stamina let out. And then I stopped caring. And then I allowed other problems to manifest. Now, if you live in Ukraine and are head of the Federation of Greater Metro West, Dov just came back actually from Moldova, and he had actually met with a number of Jews who were living in Moldova who had left Ukraine. You begin to realize when he tells their story that they don't have that luxury, right? In the same way that I didn't have that luxury today of deciding whether or not to respond to that National Day of Hate. But we in America do. And that actually is a problem for us. Because we are able to look away when we want to look away, because we're able to focus on other things, because our mind and our stamina are short, we quickly lose sight of what's happening. And suddenly, this insurmountable problem of a country like Russia feeling that their birthright is just to go and invade another country, suddenly that seems like this run-of-the-mill thing that we can let go of because we've got other pressing issues. And so the key is to figure out how to remind ourselves not to grow complacent, how to not get so fatigued, so tired, so done with this fight that in fact we stop caring altogether. My worry is not that we're not going to do enough. My worry is that we've stopped asking the question, what can we do? And so I want to challenge us tonight to realize that the problems that are going on in Ukraine are actually our problems too. And Judaism has a lot to say about what communal responsibility looks like. Because we are, to borrow another quote from Dr. King, woven into a web of destiny. And that's exactly what Judaism says. There's a famous story in our Midrash about a man who's sitting on a boat with a bunch of other people. And he takes one of these old-fashioned drills and he starts boring a hole in the boat. Everybody screams at him and says, "What are you doing? How could you be doing this? You're going to sink this boat." And the man says, "Well, I'm just boring a hole under my seat. You've got plenty of seats around you. As long as your seat is fine, then why do you care whether I bore this hole?" Now, obviously, they start yelling at him and saying to him, "Look, we are all going to drown if you put this hole under your own seat." Because every one of us is tied together in such a way that injustice in the world becomes a problem. Injustice in the world is a threat to justice anywhere. And so it becomes our job to begin to speak out against it. You've heard me numerous times talk about the fact that communal responsibility in Judaism, the kind of core line about it, is Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh B'zeh. All of Israel is responsible for one another. But that word responsible actually comes from the same root as the word guarantor. And just like we needed a guarantor when we maybe moved to Brooklyn for the first time in our 20s, needed our parents to co-sign that lease, we are co-signers on the moral lease of the rest of humanity, which means that if we see someone falling short, it becomes our problem too. That we need to raise up our moral voice. We need to stand up and understand that things that are going on across the globe have reverberations that ring in our ears today. This world is so full of people who take claim to things that are not theirs. This world is full of people with senseless hatred. This world is full of people whose sense of self-importance is so incredibly high that they think that they run the world. But they're tied into that web of destiny in the same way we are. And if we realize that the problems in Ukraine are our problems too, it means that it stops being something that we can grow tired and complacent of. Just as those people living in Ukraine cannot forget what's going on, and just as we cannot forget the anti-Semitism at our door, we must not allow ourselves to forget the injustices around the world, especially in Ukraine. We need to embody the stories of the people who are there. We need to embody the narratives of the people who are there and see ourselves in their shoes so that we can lift ourselves up and we can proclaim that we stand with them. This world is really broken, and we are the voices that can fix it. And so I want to challenge us when we see a news article about Ukraine, not to just go by it, but rather to read it. When we see a human interest story about someone overseas, to pay attention to it, not to let it wash over us, but to let it penetrate us, to let it enter into our hearts. When we look at a map, don't just see it as towns trading hands between two neighboring armies. See it as schools being destroyed. See it as neighbors having to flee their homes. See it as religious groups unable to worship in their sanctuary. See it as people whose futures are being snatched away from them. And suddenly borders that change hands no longer become an abstract thing. They become real. They become true. And it pains us to see it. The more that we can humanize this conflict, the more we can realize that it need not be something that grows tedious. It need not be something that we can glance over. It's real and it's acute. It's happening to people. And because of the global community that we live in, because of our Jewish values, it's happening in part to us. Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote that at times of great moral strife, some are guilty, but all are responsible. None of us are guilty for what Putin is doing overseas in Ukraine. But every single one of us owns a piece of responsibility to speak out, which means that when we find that other people in this country are growing tired of money going over and arms going over and support going over, when people are criticizing President Biden for spending time with President Zelensky, it's all the more important for us to affirm that this matters too. It doesn't take much, by the way, for people in Washington to hear our voice and to realize that it matters. I once had a mentor who said that he called up a friend, he worked in Washington, and he advocated for a certain bill. And the friend, who was, working for a House member, says to him, "Wow, you guys must really care about this. My phones have been ringing off the hook." So Mark Palavin, that was the friend of mine who was talking, said, "Well, tell me, how many phones ring in order for a phone to ring off the hook?" And the man said, "I must have gotten a dozen calls about this." Now, Mark Palavin used to tell this story to our teens who were in Washington at the Religious Action Center. And our teens right now, by the way, we've got a group of 9th graders there. And he used to say to them, "Well, there's a lot more than a dozen of you. And in fact, each of you probably has a dozen friends, and each of them have a dozen friends. And if a dozen means that their phones are ringing off the hook, it means that you can do a lot of good. It means that you can change the way that people think." The voice of detractors will always seem louder. And also, the voice of people that don't agree with the status quo, who have something to fight against, will always have a fight. I spoke on the high holidays about the fact that you have to march really, really fast just to stay in place in this climate. And we got to do that with Ukraine, and we got to do that with everything. But every one of us has the ability to say, when we believe in something, that it matters to us. And simply, even though we can't go there, even though we can't necessarily lift people out of war, we're not going to fight in the Ukrainian army. What we can do is we can ensure that at least those in power who are trying to make things right hear that we agree with them, hear that we support them, hear that we acknowledge what they are doing, and that we are in the political fight, at least, beside them. And so even when you feel that you want to grow complacent, when you feel that you don't care, just pick up the phone. Figure out someone to call in power and tell them that you stand with the people of Ukraine. Tell them that you support the arms being sent over. Tell them that you support President Biden's visit. This world needs our voice as much as it ever has. And even though our voice is tired, even though it may crack sometimes, even though it may grow hoarse, it can still ring out with a beautiful tone. So let it. And let those around us understand that though it may feel grinding, though the burden may sometimes feel almost too heavy to carry, we will never stop walking forward. We will search for justice, and this world will be better for it. Shabbat shalom. We're going to turn to page 282 as we rise for Elena.
Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu kamishbechot adama, shelo sam chalkeinu kahem, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו Ushemo, Ushemo, Ushemo Echad.
Please be seated. Our thoughts now turn to those who we love and who we have lost. As I call the name of your loved one, I'll invite you to rise and stay standing in honor of their memory. This Shabbat we remember Philip Ackerman, Marvin Alpern, Leonard Berman, Erwin Birnbaum, Sally Elizabeth Karp, Robert Cohen, Hona Cohen, Nettie Cohen, Betty Deach, Madeline Ezrin, Albert Feiertag, Freddie Fishbein, Lisa Fleischman, James Gary, Milton Genzer, Simon Glassman, Harry Halpern, Harris Isaacs, Rose Coulter, Ralph Kaufman, Emma Kolb, Lillian Krulowitz, Jules Lavner, Florence Lazarus, Joel Linder, Jack London, Lillian Lusgarten, Ray Matarazzo, Estelle McKinnon, Ignacia Melendez de Olivas, Pinchas Morgenstern, Ira Resnick, Louis Rockowitz, Mark Rosenberg, May Rubin, Claire Russ, Esther Schmidt, Manning Schreiner, Donald Shaw, Louis Silber, Morton Stagoff, Anna Tobias, David Tucker, Harry Vigdor, Susan Walkstein, Beatrice Weingast, Michael Weinstein, Tamar Weisberg, and Gary Zaslav. And those who are in their Shiva and Shloshim periods of mourning, Susan Jacobs, mother of Howard Jacobs, Lori Dector Yaspin, cousin of Alexandra McGuire, Richard Wilgorian, father of Jody Rudorin, and Rivka Katzman, mother of Stephen Katzman. In addition, I'll invite you to rise and share the name of anyone for whom you're observing a yard site who may not have been on this list or who you are in 1 year of mourning. Max Renteria. We rise together, page 294. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad divrach yirtzeh v'yamlech malchuteh, v'chai echon uv'yom echon uv'chai d'chol Beit Yisrael, b'gala uv'yizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mavarach le'olam olmei almaya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudashah barechu. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiram b'yama v'imru amen. Yehi shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, u'ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Please be seated. So before we close, just a few announcements. So tomorrow morning, we've got our Wake Up Shabbat, which is our Saturday morning tot program at 9 a.m. Our services are at 10:30 here, 10 o'clock here at I hope you show up at 10. Here
Always.
on the Bima, and then we actually at 11:30, if you live in Bloomfield, hopefully you've gotten this invitation, but any Bloomfield families, I think you guys are getting together for brunch to get to know each other. We have a large cohort now of Bloomfield families in our congregation. We're turning back to the 1980s. And so this is a chance to get to know other Bloomfield families and bond with them. We also are kind of rounding the bend on our Torah project. If you don't know, we are commissioning a Torah for the 13th anniversary of Ronnie being here. And so we have our last two scribing sessions. One is Sunday, one is Wednesday. It's a little bit of There are a few spots open still on Wednesday, so you can find and go on our website. We actually opened another hour because we had filled up both things and we don't want to have to turn people away. And then on the 25th, that evening, we're having a kind of a gala party in Ronnie's honor. And then that next morning, we're doing a ceremony called a siyum, where we're going to formally bring our Torah into our midst and place it into the ark. In addition to that, Purim is coming. So we've got a number of things happening. The first is a week from Sunday is our Purim Carnival for our youth. But then that Monday, so a week from Monday, we have our Purim reading. That's usually a pretty small reading because we have so much other things going on. But we really hope that you'll come because we want to make sure we have a good enough crowd to come to hear the Megillah read kind of in a more traditional way. Just because it's actually Purim doesn't mean that we shouldn't just throw all our eggs into the weekend baskets. And we've got so much great stuff going on. And then that weekend, so the weekend of the 11th, we have our Purim Spiel, which if you haven't been, is a Broadway level production.
That's right, and we have several
farce
stars of
about
the Spiel
Purim.
in this
Yes.
room right now.
So hopefully it's, when I originally came here 5 years ago, I was basically told, like, we have the most produced Purim Spiel, or Purim play, if you don't know what a Spiel is, in the history of Purim plays. And so you should definitely come.
I think we still do.
Yes. And do you
And
want to say
just,
anything
yeah,
about...
just please check your Igeret, but particularly take a look at when Rabbi Golan ben Chorin, who's a third generation Israeli Reform rabbi, is coming and visiting with us over the weekend. This is the weekend of March 17th, 18th, 19th. We are going to become, well, we already are becoming a sibling congregation to a fledgling Jewish community, liberal Jewish community in Tbilisi, Georgia. And you can all be part of that in as many connected ways as you want, lots of wonderful ideas. First, just come that weekend, Friday night, Saturday morning. There's, of course, going to be food, but definitely exciting learning with Rabbi Golan and with Rabbi Katz and I, and we'll get to hear about how we can contribute and connect and go visit in the end of May to Georgia, not the state, the country. So keep it in mind and please come back over that weekend. It'll be really exciting to hear all of the ways we're connecting with them.
Absolutely. And look, I know it seems really far away, but it's not. Passover is around the corner
It's not.
also.
6 weeks.
And so the Women's
5.5.
Seder registration is already opened and will be opening pretty soon. The registration for our second night Seder, which we do each year, and we hope that you'll join us for that. So with that, we're going to finish with Adon Olam. We're on page 321 with a pretty unfamiliar melody, I think, to most people. I might as well not let you guess. It's to the tune of the Ukrainian national anthem.
We're going to go for it. I have been working on this all week. I've got it. But please, once you hear it a little, come on in.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא להתנשא בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה והוא הווה והוא יהיה בתפארה והוא אחד ואין שני להמשילו להכבירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית ולא העוז והמשרה והוא אלי וחי גואלי וצור חבלי בעת צרה והוא ניסי ומנוס לי מנת כוסי ביום אקרא בידו אבקיד רוחי וית אישן מאירה נמרי רוחי גבי אותי אדוני לי ולא אירה. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Come have a cookie and